Y'all ready? Welcome. Are you ready? Are you ready for the acid? No hands. Well, hey there. It's your old pal Keith from wavetables.lol, home of KRC Mathwaves, the world's largest thank you Creative Cloud collection of wavetables, single cycle waveforms, and even some samples for all sorts of modern synthesizers. I'm playing a patch here from Korg Multipoly. That's one of the many synthesizers you can use Mathwaves and my other products with. I even have a collection of patches for Korg Multipoly. Did I say Modwave before? There you go. It's too much fun doing this kind of stuff. And I am playing Multipoly native inside of Unify, which is one of the things I want to talk about today. Maybe we should just turn that off, eh? Welcome to the channel. Gonna do kind of a grab bag episode today. I want to talk about this patch. This patch. Because I was recently thinking about mono synths, and I was like, I haven't really attempted a 303-ish patch in Multipoly yet, and I want to do that. And along the way, I found an interesting new synthesizer book that's online that had some interesting information about the 303 in it. We'll get there. And also, there's just a bunch of other cool stuff going on. You know, our channel now is up to more than 1,400 subscribers. Thank you, subscribers. It's really great that there are that many people that enjoy my talky synthesizer content. If you're not subscribed, like and subscribe for more talky synthesizer content. But a couple of really cool people stopped by the channel recently. So first, Mike Schott stopped by and was watching my original Multipoly review. And left a very kind comment saying that I was doing very inspiring things with the Multipoly. And, I thanked him and I pinned his comment. So if you don't know who he is, there'll be links in the description. There's always links in the description. Mike Schott makes some really excellent libraries for Wavestate and probably a few other synths, but I've only seen his Wavestate stuff. And unlike me, he is a really good keyboard player. So he's more of a proper piano player. And so his demo videos are just like outrageously great. And he does, he's done a couple really cool patch sets, that like emulate the sounds, from like classic pop tracks of the 80s and a whole bunch of other stuff. But really interesting stuff. And what he's able to do, with Korg Wavestate is just out of control. So thank you, Mike. Go check out Mike's channel after you're done with me. And then also, John Skippy Lemcool, also known as PluginGuru. I'll link to the PluginGuru channel. I'm also going to talk about a product of his today. I don't know if he became aware of KRC orchestral impressions just from being served up a video on my channel, or whether he got there through Gumroad or whatnot. But John Lemcool bought KRC orchestral impressions. That is so hard to say. It's an unfortunate name. And it's just $5. So that was super nice. Even though he'd been working on this new product, obviously he was maybe jonesing for some new wavetable inspiration. And I have been watching his live streams and his videos for a while now. He live streams on Saturdays, and he generally he talk about his own stuff a little bit, but he also demos like cool new plugins and stuff. And I find out about a lot of neat, new, cool stuff that would have gone under my radar through his live streams. And so what he has been promoting lately is this new thing, this library called Groove Summit. Let's just turn the 303 down, shall we? It's called Groove Summit, and it's a little bit like Stylus RMX. So it's a collection of grooves. So they're like MIDI powered. And there's all sorts of drum patterns and sounds in here. It's a little like Stylus RMX is where I was trying to go with that. And Stylus RMX is no longer being sold. Clear that. There's just a ton of different drum content in here that's just like really, really awesome. And some of it's loops. There's also drum kits, and then like sound menus, like drum menus that are kind of like in Stylus RMX. You had a couple different modes of working with it. You would have kind of drum loop grooves. They're not really loops, but like Rex files, where the samples are like sliced apart, but then the MIDI data like kind of powers the groove, right? So it's like old, kind of like how old school drum and bass was made, right? But that was a really cool product from Spectrasonics, but they don't sell it anymore. And so while this isn't quite as huge as Stylus RMX was, it's a pretty good start at it. And it's like a whole bunch of new drum sounds, both synthesized and recorded, that Skippy put together, and some really interesting patterns and stuff. And these are just very simple, right here, these are just very simple drum loops that, you could imagine layering with each other, right? And then where are the Summit ones? So let's see, BPM drum. I mean, look at all this stuff that you get. There's drum maps for like all these different grooves. There's kits in here. Are these the kits? Oh, so these are just kits where, okay, this is just the Kick 808 that you can combine with other maps. Where's the kits? Let's see if we can find kits in here. Are they called kits? Maybe they're not called kits. Anyway, there's a lot to explore, and I'm really just getting started with it. What I want to do is I want to get to the... There we go. I want to get the Summit grooves. So then there's these Summit grooves that you can see combine. We'll talk about what's going on here in a second. There's all these drum grooves that combine different elements of the library. It's like to make all these like insane grooves, and some have effects on them. You can there's like macro knobs. Cool. We can F with the time. I mean, just a ton of great stuff. And I don't really have the time today to like really do this collection justice, but it's brand new. It is, what is it? It's $69 right now. It's a shit ton of content. It's gigabytes of drum content. And if you were a fan of Stylus, or even you still use Stylus, you will totally cotton to this. You'll like it. Let's see here. What else is there? There's all sorts of different things. Like this one is even like a little composition. That's fun. Is there other stuff on different parts of the keyboard? Oh yeah! Oh, you can play chords. Anyway, it's super fun. Part of the reason that I got this is I'm a big fan of stylus, and I definitely wanted to, well, hey, Skippy's a customer of mine, so now I have to be a customer of his. And I hadn't bought anything from him in probably a long time. Probably not since the age of the internet with his own site and stuff. Because I had not gotten into Unify yet. So this product, the Groove Summit product, is let's see, let's get something else up here. This product is a library for Unify. So Unify is a plugin that I hadn't acquired yet. You do have to have Unify for Groove Summit to work. So that $69 price, like double that, because you're going to have to pick up Unify if you don't already have it. But I'd been wanting to get into Unify for a while since I hadn't seen his streams, and the Groove Summit collection just like, got me off my ass with that, I would say. It just pushed me over the edge in terms of getting Unify. But Unify is a very cool product. You can see that I'm running it standalone here. There's so many great grooves. Oh, here's another one where I added my 303. Let's listen to this. Let's see. Come on. There we go. What was I doing wrong before? I don't know. Let's see, are the effects on here? Yes, I'm using Serum 2 effects in this. So anyway, like Unify is this environment where you can load all your VSTs. It has a really cool architecture, makes it really easy to do all these different, like you can do like layered patches in it. And of course, it's a VST or an AU. And so it will also run in your DAW. But I've been watching Skippy like demo all the plugins and stuff that he demos each week, and he does it through Unify. And I'm like, that's kind of cooler and more fun than having the whole DAW open. So you can kind of use it like a groove box. You can use it as a way to, make a plugin that isn't standalone. For example, Serum 2. Kind of feel more like a standalone plugin. It's very CPU efficient, this thing. It like loads in a hot second. So it's very cool. And it comes with a huge amount of content. It's more than 3 like gigabytes. And there's just like all sorts of great sampled content. And then like some synthy stuff. This is not synthy, I'm just playing something and talking now, aren't I? BPM patches. It's just really neat. I mean, he's a great programmer. I mean, I haven't even gone through here yet and like favorited stuff, So it's like a really cool sound library and synth and performance environment, just kind of all in one. So it's just a super interesting concept. He's got tons of libraries for it. that you can acquire if you want to. But mostly I got it for doing stuff like this, like for using in my videos when I want to show plugins and stuff. And also for the Groove Summit library. So go grab that. I don't think it's going to be on sale for very much longer. It's new and exciting. And he's got tons of videos about this, and his live streams always feature Unify as well. So also, I think another thing that's good to know is that he's been very open about the fact that he's developing Unify version 2. And so I don't think Unify is going to get any cheaper than it is right now. It's $79. And when he introduced this product about 5 years ago, he said it would never be on sale again, and I don't think it has ever been on sale. So again, oh, there's a nice. And so he's working on Unify 2. And so I suspect that he'll be making a very, very generous offer to Unify 1 owners when that comes out. What else we got in here? Oh, dead mousy thing. Little pluck. Great stuff. Oh. There's a bunch of different components to this. It includes like some VST synths that are like either free ones or I don't know what you call them, like shareware kind of synths, but really good stuff. Like DX'd is in there, DX7 simulator. There's a Casio CZ synthesis plugin that you get here. It's just all bundled up into a nice thing. There's a cool arpeggiator. It's just a really interesting environment. So anyway, go get Groove Summit. There's no way to trial Groove Summit, but go watch Skippy's videos about it because it's really mind blowing. It's a lot of fun, and like I say, there's no more stylus anymore. So even though I still have it, and I have tons of Rex libraries that I imported into it, tons of loops of my own that I imported into it, it doesn't look like Spectrasonics is going to develop it anymore. And though we might have been hoping for like Stylus RMX V2, it doesn't look like it's going to happen. So anyway, this is a really kind of an interesting answer to that. And I suspect that there's a whole bunch more grooves that'll be coming for this, because he has been adding more and more patches. And even on his streams, he's been like creating new patches in real time and like, oh, that's a really great one. And then he saves it and it'll be part of the library. So expect updates from this too. Anyway, what a cool guy. Thanks for being a customer, John, and thank you for Unify. It's very cool. And again, I was not paid to do this. I am a customer of this product, and I'm very happy with it so far. And I'm only just scratching the surface. Okay, so we talked about cool people that have been stopping by the channel. We talked about Groove Summit a little bit for Unify and Unify itself. Let's see. Let's dig into like sound design, and let's talk about that 303 patch, and also our old friend, the TB-303. I'll take a short break, and we'll be back, and we'll do that. We're also going to talk about, in addition to the 303, we're going to talk about Soundpaint 4 from Soundpaint that just came out this week, and some interesting synthesizer modeling stuff that they're doing in that. And then also, I have some ideas about multi-sample authoring for Stylus 2. As I didn't really say it in my overview, my little short talky video. It was a long talky video, come on. About Stylus 2, I didn't really mention verbally that sound font authoring, which is the multi-sample format that Serum 2 supports, sucks ass. So sound font authoring sucks. But I have some ideas there for you to kind of make it easier and more modern. So we'll take a quick look at that. So again, kind of a little grab bag episode. There's probably some other stuff I wanted to talk about. And that's why I have this list of notes that you may or may not be able to see on the side of my screen. because, I'm an absent-minded professor, right? Okay, Keith, take a break, and then we'll come back and do more. This is kind of neat. And of course, I rendered my name different ways 2 times, but it's got a really nice like tagging and library system for Unify patches that you create that, of course, then inside them, can hold other patches. And so let's go get this Unify patch, which has it's got my multi-poly patch it's kind of a 303 emulator. We'll talk about that. Then I can open it up and see. I'm like, oops, come on, load up. There it goes. Multi-poly's interface takes a little minute to come up. So this is the non-sequenced version of this patch, which I've called Silverbox, because the TB-303 is silver, right? Let's see. And anyway, the story about this, and I will add this patch, by the way, to KRC Collection 1, which is my collection of patches for Korg Multipoly and Multipoly Native. And, so I was thinking about, okay, I should do some, monosynth patches, and, because I don't do those a whole lot. Let's make that a little bigger, shall we? And I was like, well, I haven't attempted a 303 emulation. So, let's do a little research, because it'd been a while since I read about the 303, and I was kind of curious about, its filters, but also its waveforms. And I ran across this new resource. I'll open this in a new tab, I guess. So there's this book that's online. I think it's from 2022. So, it's relatively new. I had not run across it before, but it's called Computational Thinking through Modular Sound Synthesis. And the idea, I know that sounds a little weird. Yeah, it's from 2022. So the impetus for this book is to teach kind of basic programming, computation and programming principles, but to do it through modular synthesis. And so if you want to learn a little bit more about computer science, but you also are interested in learning synthesizers, this is a very interesting book. And it's cool because it has all the standard background stuff about sound that you would expect from, kind of a science-y book of this nature. But it also, and I haven't done this part yet, but in this online version of the book, there's a web-based version of VCV Rack. And so it actually takes you through some exercises in modular synthesis, and you can have a synthesizer right in the web page. It's pretty wild, and it talks about all sorts of different modeling that we might do in a synthesizer. I think it's a very interesting book. I'm not in the mood to get instruction on modular patching because I'm very experienced with that, but I'm definitely going to read the rest of this book because there's surely interesting stuff. But this came up because there's some commentary in the last part of the book about the TB-303, and it talks about how to model the 303 in VCV Rack. But I found it because it does have some talk about the waveforms in the 303. It talks about the basic structure, blah, blah, blah. Okay, we know. There's oscillators, there's a filter, there's an envelope, right? There's the accent control, etc. But I was kind of curious because this synth does have, right, it has its own sound. Now, this is not a real 303. This is a 303 inspired multi-poly patch. But you know what it sounds like. You've heard it. Yes, that real squelchy resonance. Can make these really kind of growly sounds. And my version's really wild. It's very non-linear. That's the power of multi-poly's filters for you. And of course, you know, most of the fun of a 303, right, is twisting the knobs. It's playing a pattern and twisting the knobs. And so that's, we'll get to a sequence version of this, but which we've already heard. See, it's got these buttons for like launch virtual modular. And so that'll like open up VCV Rack in the web page. It's whack. I thought it was very cool. Anyway, so there is some discussion of the oscillator and the kind of unusual waveforms. They're nominally a sawtooth and a square wave. But here are the actual shapes. And so top row, let's see, on the left we've got the square wave on the left and the sawtooth wave from the 303 on the right. And DynSync did a bunch of reference recordings, and you can also find that. I will put a link in the description to all this stuff, but also to the DynSync reference library, where there's recordings, I think, of the C note with like all sorts of different settings from the 303. So when we look at these, right, we see that they're like, let's see. This is supposed to be a square wave, but it's not very squarey. It's a little bit sawtoothy, right? And then this is the sawtooth wave, but it's maybe a little bit squarey in a way. It's this very unusual shape anyway. And there's an observation here that these two waveforms actually, they sort of look like high-passed versions of like truer square and sawtooth waves. And one thing I noticed about this bottom row, where, let's see, what's on the bottom row? So bottom row, this guy, this is the saw wave that is high pass filtered on the right, and that creates like the square wave. So you can see this wave shape looks very similar to this, which is the 303's square wave. Now, I wasn't going to go like whole hog and like do a custom wavetable. Although you could go to these DynSync like reference recordings. And okay, one slightly weird thing about Unify is that the plugin windows kind of come up in a modal and they're in front of everything. I don't know how you can send them to the back without closing them. That's a little bit weird. I wonder if that's a known issue or if that's intentional. Anyway, a minor quibble with it. So yeah, anyway, I was noticing that, of course, we can't do this exact thing in multipoly. Like we could start, if we had a high pass filter that we could put before other stuff, I suppose we could actually use a sawtooth wave to get a square wave. But one thing I noticed about the actual example that's used here is this sawtooth is quite logarithmic, right? It doesn't have a linear ramp. So the author of this book kind of started with this logarithmic ramp saw and then high pass filtered it to get something that greatly resembles the 303 square. And so I took a slightly different approach, but I was inspired by that idea. I was like, yeah, there is something special and weird about the 303 oscillators. Double click, Keith. Double click. There we go. Get back to multipoly here. Let's go into edit mode. And so how I handled this is in KRC Mathwaves, there are wavetables for logarithmic saws, exponential curve saws, and then also polynomial curve saws, like S-shaped sawtooth waves. What am I talking about? I'm talking about a ramp. It's like S-shaped ramps on the sawtooth waves. So inspired by that log-looking saw that we saw in that example, I picked my log saws 1 wavetable for a wavetable oscillator. Now, of course, the 303 is just a single oscillator synth, right? So we're not going to use all of the other shit that we have in multipoly, all the awesome other shit. We're just going to use one wavetable oscillator, and I've chosen to use a wavetable oscillator. And we've got all these mod modes, right? So here's the unaffected version of my logarithmic saw. You'll see that I've set my position here to where I've got a shape that's a lot like that one we saw in the diagram. And so if we listen to this, so there's our 303 sawtooth sound. Let's turn up the resonance. So we could use the sawtooth one. Sorry, I'm just like messing around. Okay, but then we'll use that. So if we want to make the square wave, instead of like designing, you know, a new square wave that looks like that, what I figured is like, well, you know, the square wave has only even harmonics. Whoops, I didn't mean to click there. I meant to go back to my mods. And so we do have a mod mode in Multipoly, and this is also in Korg Modwave. You can also do this in Serum, by the way. Serum has an even odd warp mode, but we're going to pick odd only. So this is going to filter out in our wavetable all of the even harmonics and only leave us with the odd harmonics that are, you know, that's the sound of a square wave. But you'll see that this is not a traditional square wave, right? It's kind of got a little bit of a saw shape, even though this would only contain odd harmonics. Let's turn our resonance down. So, right, this doesn't sound like a pure square wave. It sounds like a little bit like a saw-y a square wave, which is very interesting. The other thing that this book points out and this is something that came from DynSync. Let's see, where is this? It talks about the behavior of the envelope generators, and that they have this very analog response where they kind of build up voltage over time. That's no surprise. But there's also, let's see, where is it? Pulse width. Wait, PWM duty cycle? Oh, there we go. Yeah. So, according to the guys from DynSync, the other thing that happens with the square wave is that at high pitches, the duty cycle is 45%, but it's about 71% in the low pitches. So there is actually some measure of PWM going on. And so to emulate that, I'm using the stretch morph mode. And so here is this with none, okay? And you see that this just kind of snapped back to an even-ish duty cycle. If we put on stretch, now we can use the morph parameter to change the pulse width, right, of our square wave. So what this is saying is that up at higher pitches, and I'm modulating this, so let's just turn the modulation off. So high pitches would have more of a duty cycle like this, and then low pitches have a duty cycle like this. So there must be, in fact, as the oscillator plays different pitches, it must actually PWM a bit. Its pulse width must change. And so that's probably a little subtlety that we perhaps don't hear very clearly in the 303. I'm just undoing my changes, sorry. You know, but there must be this kind of pulse width modulation thing going on. So what I did to emulate that is we've got our morph at 50%, and then I'm modulating that stretch parameter using note number at about 78, 77.9 here. And if you watch over here, the little dot that indicates where the morph is, or watch the waveform, you'll see that in high notes, it PWMs to this narrower duty cycle, but then at lower notes, it PWMs. And so presumably we would hear that. I mean, it's a very subtle effect, right? It doesn't sound like PWM because it's not like continually going, right? But that's probably part of the 303's unique slide sound. Now, the next part of the 303 is its filter. Now this is kind of interesting. I don't know if does this book talk about the filter? So it was commonly there was some folk wisdom about the 303's filter, that it was perhaps a 3-pole filter, so like an 18 dB per octave filter, rather than like a 2-pole or 4-pole filter. I don't know where that idea comes from. I mean, maybe because some people say, well, that's what it sounds like. It also might have come from misreadings of the 303's circuit diagrams and stuff. But it's now generally accepted that the 303 doesn't have a 3-pole filter. It is a 4-pole filter. And so, sorry, gosh, I'm like, get it together, Keith. I'm just kind of rambling today, but that's what I do. I make long, talky videos, and I'm kind of going all over the place. I keep losing my train of thought because there is a lot to talk about here. Anyway, it turns out that the 303's filter is probably, for all intents and purposes, a 4-pole filter, but there's one really interesting thing about it. It doesn't self-oscillate. Right? It doesn't go into self-oscillation. It gets really wild and squelchy. It does that, but it doesn't create a sine wave. Wow, listen to that. That's fun. But so it doesn't do that self-oscillation thing. So I was thinking about, in multipoly, well, how can we approximate that? Now you might go for like the MS-20 low-pass filter, which is a 4-pole or 24 dB per octave filter, and it is kind of noisy sounding. It does get pretty squelchy, but it goes into self-oscillation. And I was like, well, if we really wanted to experiment with making a filter that's as close as we could get in multipoly, I would put the SEMP, the SEM style filter, in series with another one. So the SEM filter is a 2-pole filter. So it's a 12 dB per octave filter. But then, since we have serial mode, we can stack 2 of them together, and in series, that will in fact give us a 4-pole filter. But also, this filter does not self-oscillate. And so what I did here in multipoly is, first I set up my filter A, and then with the SEMP, and then in like the modulations that I was going to want, and then I copied it. So, in multipoly, you can do like copy, and then you can do right click and you can paste. I'm not going to do that here, so I'll ruin my patch. But there you go. So there's a 24 dB per octave filter that has a squelchy resonance, but doesn't go into self-oscillation. And what we're doing here is the filter cutoff is modulated by filter A, the filter A envelope, okay? And it's the same in B. B is just a copy of A. So we're just using this one envelope. And so these two cutoffs share the same modulations, right? So that as I've got mod knob mod knob 2, you can see, so filter A envelope is modulating the filter at a maximum value, right? This is as much as we can modulate it. It's plus 142. I guess that's octaves. Is that octaves or semitones? I guess that's semitones. And then we're scaling it with mod knob 2. So mod knob 2 is over here. I really should label these. I haven't labeled these yet. We can label these, but so in this patch, mod knob 2 is the filter envelope amount. So if it's up like this, we're not getting any envelope effect on the filter, but if we move this up, now we're modulating cutoff. You can watch it bounce around over here. We're modulating the filter cutoff on both of our filters by the same amount that are scaled by mod knob 2, right? And of course, that can go backward too. So we can forward. All right, so that's how that's set up. There's also some modulation on resonance. Oh yeah, that's mod knob 1. So mod knob 1 controls resonance, so it goes from all the way down, so no resonance, all the way up to its maximum resonance. And you can see that with this stacked SEM filter, starting up here, we start to get that it's a very 303-ish sound. And then it starts to scream. We have only a little bit of travel here, but wow, wow, wow. All right. Anyways, that's the basic setup there. And then let's see, what else are we doing? What else is important? Oh, well, of course, the 303 slides, right? So I've got this patch, doesn't have the sequencer in it, so I'm doing the slides with Portamento. So this is a one oscillator patch, right? And I've got mono legato mode on. Okay, so we're in mono mode, so it's not polyphonic. There's only one oscillator, one filter. And then we're in mono legato mode so that the envelopes don't re-trigger if we play legato. Let's see, can we see our keyboard? Right? So the envelope re-triggers if I play detached, but if I play legato, we'll get a slide effect. And another thing that I researched real quick, because I couldn't remember this, is I think almost everybody would know, even just from listening to it, that the type of portamento that's in the 303 slide is constant time, right? So it's not a constant rate, it's a constant time. Like no matter how far apart the notes are that you play, it takes the same amount of time to get from one note to the other. Now, in multipoly, there's two different ways we could do this. So we do have a constant time mode that would sound like this. And the portamento time is 60 milliseconds, it turns out. And so I just dialed that right in. So 60 milliseconds is 0.060 seconds. And so there's a constant time portamento, but we've also got this mode that's called vintage linear. And I thought that was maybe a little more evocative than the constant time. And it maybe... I want to get back to my original patch. But I think that might be, that's a nice sound. And again, we're not trying to be slavish with this impression. We're trying to be inspired by this instrument. So those are like the really important components of a 303 patch. And you see that I think this does a pretty good job. It has a lot of range. Now this has we've got access to, the more settings in the filter than we would on a 303. The 303 almost kind of sounds like this area all the time. And then it can go into this area. But with the way that multipoly is, we can do a lot more tame tones as well. Okay, but this is only, now we could take this patch and we could sequence it in our DAW, right? We could simulate the slides by making legato notes or playing legato. And then, we could use modulation, automation in our DAW, right, to control our knob movements and stuff. But what's maybe a little more fun, right, is to use the modulation sequencer in multipoly to come up with a patch that lets you play hands-free, right? Let's see here. Where's hold? I lost hold. Where the hell did hold go? because I didn't set this one up for hold. Let's see, where is it? Let's go to one that's got a hold on it. This has hold on it, right? There we go. Is it in setup? What am I missing? Really? Am I gonna, oh, there it is. It's up here. Okay, there it is. All right. Let's go back to patch 6 here. Hold. Okay, let's do a hold mode. So what hold mode will do, right, is like keep the key held down for me. And so in this version of the patch, we're using the modulation sequencer to kind of do our slides and our triggering of the filter envelope. And then our hands are free to play with the knobs, right? Okay, this is part 3, the real take 2, part 3, take 2, where we're going to look at the modulation sequencer. I'll be right back. So, this version of the patch, right, uses the modulation sequencer to kind of simulate sequencing. Now, the modulation sequencer in Multipoly and similarly in ModWave originally comes from Wave State, where it's slightly different. The modulation sequencer is not a clip launcher. It's not a MIDI note sequencer. It's a modulation sequencer. And it can generate these multiple lanes of different values, okay, that we can use to like simulate a MIDI sequencer. And to do that, you have to kind of think about things a little differently. So I'm not going to talk too much about the basic setup here. I'm just using the init timing lane patch here as my starting point for making this sequence. So basically I've got a 1-bar loop that is all 16th notes. Okay, and then you can see that I can define pitches for different steps, right? So, you know, here we're going, you know, up 3 semitones, then down 5 semitones, up 5 semitones, up 3, up 2. And so those will execute on each step. The other steps are set to 0, which means no change from the note I'm holding, if the step is triggered. But the most important thing to think about here is that we kind of have to forget about our amp envelope. So instead of our amp envelope gating a single note, we have to kind of think about it as gating the entire patch. So you'll see I've set it to like an instant attack with full sustain, and then, you know, a little bit of release, just so notes don't get cut off if I stop the sequence in some strange place. And let's actually go in, let's go and turn off our effects. Let's turn off the delay so you can really hear what the sequence is. You know, one of the reasons that like 303 based techno music works, right, is that like repetition is authority in music. So if we just, whatever this sequence is, if we just repeat it enough times, like over and over and over, like you hear in techno music, you know, it becomes sensible, no matter like kind of what the sequence is. I mean, you know, this ain't exactly Beethoven here, but it becomes cool as you listen to it over and over, and you're like, oh, okay, well that makes perfect sense. It's funny how that works. So anyway, so our amp envelope becomes kind of a gate for the whole voice, because the modulation sequencer is per voice and per layer and can do different things. So we'll set up our amp envelope like a gate. Okay. Now, what we're going to do instead to control the volume of each note, so you can kind of see here, if we look at sequencer lane A, that's actually what's triggering each of my notes, okay? And so where there's a value of 0, there's not going to be volume applied to the oscillator. But how does that work? So if we go back into synthesis mode, it's a little easier to see. In the mixer section, so I'm not showing it, over here in the mixer section, you'll see that here's the volume fader for oscillator 1, okay? And if you look at it closely, and if I click on it, you'll see that the value here for the volume of oscillator 1, which is up here, is being controlled by step sequencer A. And then over here in the sequencer, here's sequencer A, right? So we start with a value of 100, so that's going to drive that oscillator to maximum volume. We see we've got a lower velocity step here, higher, lower, higher, and then zeros in between, right? And so that is going to trigger the volume of oscillator 1 to go up and down. There's one more trick that the modulation sequencer can do that's extremely powerful. There's this thing called the shape lane. And so the shape lane can scale this value over the duration of this step. So for example, here in this first step, we're going to go to ultimately a volume of 100, but look at this shape. So this shape, what is it called? It's called logarithmic up. So there's a logarithmic curve up. So it's kind of a swell up and an instant off. And then this next trigger is an ADSR shape, right? But it's going to scale only to a maximum value of 34. Over here, we've got another step that's 100. This is using the 50% pulse long shape, right? So you see that's an instant on with then this nice little decay curve. We do that again. And then all these intervening steps are set to all off, okay? And so in this way, we can make the shape of the amplitude envelope. So if we were to look at that, we can't really see the mixer and this at the same time, but you can kind of imagine it if you go over to synthesis and now, watch the modulation here. You'll also see this modulation down here in sequencer A. So look at the shapes that get generated there. And did I change something in my sequencer? I must have touched something weird because that doesn't sound the same, does it? Oh, it's just because I'm used to hearing it with the delay on it. Ha ha ha! Oh, all right. See, you can see the different envelope shapes being generated here. And so that's giving us an actual note at each of these steps. All right, that's pretty cool. Now, the other thing that's going on here is I could use that same lane if I wanted to modulate the filter, right? But instead, what I want to do is I want to trigger the filter envelope. And so it's filter envelope A that's controlling both of the filters. Watch the cutoff values here. Watch the modulation on the cutoff values here for filters A and B. Now, how that's being triggered is by filter envelope A. And what we're doing here is we've turned this filter off. So by default, this filter envelope would get triggered at node on, but we're going to turn that off and we're going to trigger it by a different source. We're going to trigger it by step sequencer A. Again, step sequencer A are these values here, right? That go from the 100 blah 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 blah, right? And they're being scaled by the shape layer. Now, what we can do with that is we can set a threshold such that we'll re-trigger the filter envelope only for values, okay, of step sequencer A that are higher than a threshold. And here I've got it set to 66. So what's going to happen is that if one of these steps is higher than 66, the filter envelope's going to re-trigger. But if it's not above 66, like in this fourth step here, the filter envelope will not get triggered. And so in that way, we can kind of do legato stuff, right? Where we let the filter envelope run its course. And so you can kind of see that if we look at the graph here for filter A. See, it's got a couple of longs and then those little short pulses in there. And that's how we can do this kind of, filter modulation driven out of the sequencer. I haven't really talked about the sequencer much, so I'm umming and ahhing my way through it, but I did want to explain that. Now, one thing I haven't done with this patch yet is when we're triggering this particular patch in this way, you might notice that we've lost that modulation in a sense that we set up here on the morph, that, you know, we had note number that's controlling morph so that we can get this, you know, pulse width modulation with the keyboard. Since no notes are being pressed, this no longer modulates. Like, so just, you know, watch this dot here. It just will stay static, right? You know, it modulates with the original note, but it doesn't change as the pitch changes up and down. So we could restore that. Let's see, we want to take, we want to do that with the pitch lane, okay? So we're going to take this value for morph, and we're going to add a new modulation, and we'll set that to generators, let's see, step pitch is the value coming from the pitch lane, and I guess we'll set it similar to this. I don't think it needs to be like 70. Let's see what happens at about 60. Okay, now that might be going a little too low. And that's maybe not enough modulation. Again, this is a really subtle effect. But hey, I'm trying to be like, you know, really gnarly, really crunchy, as you might say in RPGs, about my modeling. You know, it's like, I don't know if this has much of an effect, but we're going to model it anyway. Okay, so that's pretty cool. Let's see, is there anything else I should talk about here? This is not a real detailed tutorial on the step sequencer. I should probably do a detailed tutorial on the modulation sequencer in Multipoly and Modwave. But, you know, that kind of gives you an idea of what we have to do to use it in this kind of context. And since I added that modulation onto the pulse width, let's just save this as a new patch. I think we're up to version 8 here now. One other thing that's worth noting, I guess before we move on, is that the different steps in the sequencer lanes do have transition types. And so the way that we're getting slides here sometimes, like this one particularly, this slide down, is that the transition types here from, say, 3 to 2 to finally to 0, you'll see are exponential. And so that exponential change from 3 to 2 is going to give us a bit of a portamento effect. And since the 303 portamento time is so fast, it's just 60 milliseconds, this actually works in a pretty convincing way. But we could change the feel of this slightly if we selected other transition types. Like if we turn this off, these pitches should just kind of jump to each other. Let's listen to that. And if we make this exponential again, you can hear that it's a more pronounced kind of slide effect. Anyway, that's how that works. Okay. All right. So there you go. Hey, you know, emulating a 303. There are a couple of videos I want to point you to that are also fascinating about the 303. I'm not going to tell you much about them. I'm just going to insist that you go watch them because they're really fun. Let's see. We talked about Mike's channel, didn't we? We talked about PluginGuru. Okay, so there's two really great videos. There'll be links in the description. There's always links in the description. This one's really fun. It's called What Else Can the 303 Do? I encourage you to watch that. It's the young man who did it is very funny. The other, another video that's like really excellent, actually from about the same time as that What Else Can the 303 Do a video, is this one by Captain Picant, who does all these like drum machine and beat oriented videos. They're extremely well produced and funny, and this is a very, very good video. So go watch that. There's links in the description. Okay, moving on. And this is going to be a long-ass video, but that's okay. You like talky synthesizer content, right? Like and subscribe for more talky synthesizer content. So the next thing I'm going to talk about today is multi-sample authoring for Serum 2. I knew this was going to happen, and I mentioned it in my original video about Serum 2, but SoundFont authoring tools suck ass. And so I want to propose a better method of composing multi-samples, creating multi-samples for Serum that works quite well. And we're going to use Convert with Moss for that. So, and I didn't make a note on it. I didn't make a note on Convert with Moss. So let's see, convert. Oh, well, there's a note, but I didn't put the URL. All right, let's see. Convert with Moss. Where are you? All right. So another thing I wanted to talk about today is Serum 2 and using multi-samples with it. In my first talk about Serum 2, I noted that most of my SFZ files, sound font files in SFZ format, didn't seem to work properly as multi-samples. And I'm not exactly sure what the issue is with authoring, whether it was just the fact that those SFZ files were created for, what was the instrument? Oh, Dimension Pro, an older synth. That supported multi-samples. But I also showed how those didn't, their loop points didn't come in. And I'm not sure if that is due to a problem with how Serum is reading the loop information that's embedded in wave files. Because I do know that the start and loop endpoints in the SFZ files that I have don't have like loop start and loop end identified in the program itself, in the SFZ file itself. And so I was thinking about workarounds for this, and there's an excellent program that you should know about that's called Convert with Moss. It's from, actually he's also a YouTuber, but more of a developer, Jürgen Musgraber. Apologies, Jürgen, if I'm butchering your name. I don't know exactly how he pronounces it. But there'll be links in the description to Jürgen's channel as well, and also to his excellent program, Convert with Moss. And let's just run it. This completely free and open source program that actually has a pretty nice interface, surprise, surprise, runs on Windows, Mac, and Linux, I believe. And it converts different multi-sample formats to each other. Now, I have seen other people, at least one other person, showing how to use Convert with Moss to go from, for example, Bitwig's multi-sample format, and then write them out to SFZs. And if you check all the boxes, you don't need the broadcast audio metadata, but if we convert the samples to FLAC, put all the instrument data in, put all the sample data in, and remove junk. A conversion from Bitwig multi-samples, which any user of Bitwig could construct, you can convert them to SFZs that Serum 2 will read properly. Now, what if you don't have Bitwig, right? Like not everyone's a Bitwig user. Excuse me, my eyes are dry. Might be time for a drink. If you're not a Bitwig user, what could you do? Well, there's an excellent multi-sample builder in, a program called Korg Sample Builder. Now, Korg Sample Builder is for building multi-samples that are for Korg Wave State or Modwave. It's the Korg multi-sample format. And this conversion from the Korg multi-sample format to SFZ does work. And I did an example here of our pal Maurice White now looping properly. So just doing that conversion from the Modwave, the Korg Modwave, Korg Modwave wave state format, Korg multi-samples, to SFZ with these options enabled, works very well. And we could actually take a look at Korg Sample Builder. I don't want the installer. What the heck? Why did I do that? No, we're not going to make changes. We just want to run Sample Builder. There's Sample Builder. Sample Builder is also free. You do not have to own WaveState or Modwave to use Sample Builder. And I guess maybe I already had it running. Whoops, that's OBS. What is going on? All hell has broken loose. Here's Korg Sample Builder. Korg Sample Builder is pretty cool. Let's turn off. Let's see. We're gonna have to go to Unity. I'm gonna need to get my keyboard controller back here. Let's see here. You don't use multi-poly right now. You can take a chill pill. And then over here in Sample Builder, let's go to Preferences and hook up there we go, MIDI input from multi-poly. Here is a multi-sample I've built that actually has a sample. All these different kind of hip-hop hits, chill out, hip-hop, somewhat lo-fi samples in it. There's one on every key. And Korg Sample Builder is really cool. When I was beta testing, it was like not the Mark II WaveState, but the second version of the WaveState software that it was going to allow you to now import your own samples to WaveState. I spent a lot of time beta testing this product and making sure that everything worked really well. And also, I had some of these same issues with like SFZ to Korg multi-sample format, and Jürgen was super helpful in like it took feedback and acted on it immediately and like improved Convert with Moss to better communicate between these two formats. The Korg Sample Builder is just super cool. It's like, nice. It's like a real piece of software. One of the problems with other SFZ authoring solutions that are out there, and surely I haven't seen all of them, but many of them are very old school, very Windows 95 and whatever, right? So this is a supported, like, nice piece of software that's completely free. There will be links in the description, runs on Windows and Mac. And let me just show you, like, how we could build a multi-sample like that really quickly. Okay, so I had just tried to show you how easy it was to use Korg Sample Builder, but one of the WAV files I had imported was seems to have been defective, and so the conversion process didn't work. But anyway, Korg Sample Builder is pretty easy to use. Now, it's not a full-featured like loop setting environment and things like that, although it does support basic forward looping. You can import audio files to it two ways. You can do file import audio files. Maybe I should move this over a little bit. Or you can just drop samples from your file system onto the keyboard down here. And if they're named appropriately, like if they have, note number and octave at the end of the file name, it will map them automatically. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to grab like a bunch of these kind of hip-hoppy, chill out hits that I have a collection of. And so I've got like 43 files here, and I'm just going to drop them onto the keyboard here. And what happens is that Sample Builder automatically builds key ranges for me. And I can play them from my keyboard as well, if I want to. And so then we can take this, save it as a Korg multi-sample. So we'll do save multi-sample. Oh, let's give it a name. Let's see. This is AAA KRC hits, just so I could find it easily, right? And then let's do save multi-sample. And we'll save it here. We're going to save it in a directory called AAA Korg to SFZ source. And then over in Convert with Moss, let's see, where are you, Convert with Moss? There you are. We just select our options like this. So we're going from the Korg WaveState ModWave format, and you select a directory up here. I think I'm already in the right directory. Yeah, this is where I want to be. So any Korg Korg multi-sample files that are in this directory will be converted, and it'll even walk multiple directory levels. And then you just select your destination. So let's say it's going to be an SFZ file, right? Convert samples to FLAC, add the instrument data, the sample data, remove crap, and then we'll select our destination folder. That will be here. This is actually a new folder I created underneath my source folder, but it could be anywhere. The one thing that Convert with Moss expects is that directory should be empty. So by default, if there's already some files in that directory, it won't write there because it doesn't want to do bad things and like, completely screw up a directory that already has something in it. But if you click this button down here, add new files, don't know if you can see it. I hope it's not behind my head. Just if you click that, it will add duplicate files to that folder. Anyway, now that we have like something in the source directory and our conversion selected, we just hit convert, and then it's converting all of those WAV files to FLAC, and it's writing the SFZ file. And now I have a SFZ file that I can use in Serum. Now, I don't have Unify running right now. So like we can close, well, we don't have to close Sample Builder, but I'm going to need my keyboard back. So we'll turn off MIDI from Multipoly there. And let's get Unify. And let's load up our friend Serum again. So let's see here. Instruments, Xfer Serum 2. One quick note. In the current versions of Serum and Unify, there is something that you need to do if you want to use Serum properly with Unify. You do have to go to the transport menu down here. Serum seems to have a little bit of an issue that Skippy is working with the guys at Xfer to fix, but you have to select the trigger mode to be manual start stop. I do not know why this is called manual start stop, but if you don't do this, like the tails of notes will be cut off coming from Serum. So it's just, save the instrument and then, you wouldn't have to do this again, but you do have to change that setting. So anyway, now over here in Serum, yeah, I can, oops, that's not Serum. Goodness gracious sakes alive, I grabbed the wrong window. I guess let's shrink that down. Okay, here's Serum. And so let's go grab our multi-sample oscillator and let's see if we can import that new SFZ we just created. So it's going to be over here in, oops, I could have gotten there quicker. Korg to SFC source. Here's my SFC conversions. Here's AAA KRC hits. Open that up. Oh yeah, cool. All right, so there you go. So that works. Now, I presume another thing that would work is because Convert with MOS can like walk entire directory structures. If I wanted to, I could point Convert with MOS at the top level of my SFZ folder, and I could convert to Modwave, like do that to some new directory, and then come back and do the Modwave to SFZ conversion, and it would write all that extra data into the second set of SFZ files. I haven't bothered to do this because actually the directory I'm talking about is quite huge, and I expect that some of these issues might get resolved pretty soon. But just for like authoring brand new SFZ files, Korg Sample Builder is a great tool. And again, you don't have to own WaveState or ModWave to be able to use this. It's just freely available from Korg. Links in the description. It's got good documentation. Blah blah blah. So that solves one way to solve the multi-sample authoring problem for Serum 2. Is there anything else I wanted to say about this? I don't think so. Oh, there is one thing. I need to report this to Jürgen, actually, because I was expecting, see, you can select the same input and output format. And so you might think that if you selected an SFZ format here, and then selected your directory of SFZ files, and then convert them to SFZ, but now, set these options, do they convert to FLAC, blah, 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 you would think that might work. But instead, what Convert with MOS seems to do is it's like, oh, these are already SFZ, so there's no conversion to do there, even though I'm asking it to do this, more complex conversion. I think that would probably be easy for him to fix. So I do want to report that. That would be much more direct than going from SFZ to Korg and then from Korg back to SFZ. But the Korg to SFZ does work. There's one more thing I wanted to talk about today, even though this video is going to be incredibly long. And that's another approach to modeling. And it's our buddies over at Soundpaint have released Soundpaint 4. Soundpaint 4 is a sampler, and it's kind of designed to be the dedicated sampler for Soundpaint's libraries, but you can use it to build your own sampled instruments. And they've added some really new features. So I wanted to take a quick look at that because as part of these new features, they have a new library that's a deep sampled Juniper 8. And I think it's pretty interesting and worth talking about. You know, Korg Multipoly, which we were talking about in the first part of this video, you know, has all sorts of interesting analog modeling and, you know, modeling classic oscillators and modeling different types of filters. Soundpaint has a slightly different approach to this, like very, very deep sampled oscillators, and then they have new modeled filters with a process that they call capture analog filter. I suspect it's some sort of morphing convolution, but it sounds really good and it's very interesting. I had previously done a look at Soundpaint Disco Strings, which is an awesome library. And, you know, I wanted to play with Soundpaint 4, and I wanted to check out this deep sample Juniper, which does sound beautiful. So we'll look at that in the next segment. So, Soundpaint version 4 is out. Soundpaint is, of course, from Soundpaint. And it is, as I've talked about in a previous video, an interesting sampler instrument that is free, by the way. There's no reason not to go get it. So, Soundpaint version 4 came out, and I know this video is getting very long. But I did want to talk about this just for a short while. The big thing in Soundpaint version 4 is that it now has modeled analog filters that Trolls from Soundpaint calls CAF, for Capture Analog Filter. So I'm not exactly sure how this technology works. I'm assuming that it's maybe some sort of convolution technology. But one thing that was keeping Soundpaint from being a full-fledged synth was that it didn't have like a per voice filter. When I looked at, for example, let's just grab some other patch here from another collection. When I looked at Soundpaint Disco Strings, there we go, there's some strings in there. When I looked at Soundpaint Disco Strings, it didn't have per voice filters, so you can have filters as effects. Let's see here. Do 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 do. That's a pretty string sound. This is from the Ad Astra string library from Soundpaint. You had filters as an effect, so kind of a paraphonic filter. And you can see in this patch, there is a filter here that can apply to all the voices. And commonly in Soundpaint, you'll see things like the mod wheel is what I'm playing here. The mod wheel will be applied like to volume so that you could do swells and things. And sometimes that will adjust the paraphonic filter in the effects rack. But now in Soundpaint 4, there are per voice filters. If the are are authored. Spit it out, Keith, if they're authored in the right way. And one of the first instruments to support this is a new thing called Juniper. It's in their shop somewhere. Juniper is a deep sampled Jupiter 8. And you'd be forgiven if you thought that maybe this sound was coming from something like Korg multipoly. But this is a different approach to modeling. So you've got a bunch of deep sampled notes from a Jupiter 8, different patches, and even the raw oscillators that can then be run through these model filters. And the sound is quite convincing. Juniper 8 is $80 for this sample library. It's very huge. It was about a 33 gig download, I think, when it was installing. And there are some beautiful patches in Juniper. And I just kind of wanted. Oh, that's cute. Whoa, fat fingers this morning. It's a pretty interesting instrument. And it's not just limited to straightforward sounds of the Jupiter 8, but there's even some experimental type stuff. I think it's really pretty. Sample libraries are a little bit of a specialized thing. This instrument might be aimed at in-the-box composers and things like that. But it sounds pretty beautiful and pretty convincing. And I'm very interested in these modeled filters. There's a bunch of them. I really should have. I haven't had time to do this. I should have gone through and favorited some stuff. But for example, in this patch, we're using this modeled Jupiter 8 low pass. It's a 4-pole low pass, but they've thrown in the free version of Soundpaint, you get access to a Moog style filter, so they call it Mood. We can listen to that real quick. A classic ladder type filter. There's also a model of an Oberheim, an SEM style filter, that's actually used in a lot of the patches in Juniper. That's pretty. Turn up the resonance. Now, I think as I poorly explained a moment ago, the new CAF capture analog filter style filters, they're only available if the sample set is authored in what Soundpaint calls PCM. So they have two different formats now. There's RTS, which is their real-time sampling instruments, which is a sample format that is designed for morphing and simulating huge numbers of velocity layers. But then they've also got PCM samples now, and what they mean by that is instead of being the RTS format, they're based on just the uncompressed wave format. I'm not sure why that's required to use these per voice filters, but that's a thing. And I understand that pretty soon you'll be able to author your own PCM multi-samples in Soundpaint. That's not available just now. It's the only PCM libraries that are available are from Soundpaint. You can't do your own. But I was like, I think this is going to be super interesting when that capability opens up. And, you know, I think it'll be available soon. So there's really interesting filters in here, and they sound really good. They're very sweet. I mean, this is just a different approach to modeling. There are some cute ARPs and things like that. Where are the ARPs? Let's see. Let's go to the ARPs. There's a ton of patches, a ton of layers, meaning basically the basic multi-samples. They call them parts in Soundpaint. I feel like I'm doing a lousy job of demoing this, but I find it really interesting. It was worth the money to me. I mean, that's a pretty convincing analog-y sound, right? So I think it's quite an achievement, sample-wise, and a very interesting alternative to... Whoops, come on, select that. A very interesting alternative to things like multi-poly. There's some really cool ambient stuff in here. The effects in Soundpaint are quite nice. Like, there's this shimmer reverb that really sounds pretty good. And we're hosting it in Unify, so I guess we could even throw some Air Windows Consolidated on it, huh? And we could get our friend Galactic 3 out here and just space out. So go check that out. Soundpaint 4 and Juniper, if you're interested in having a great Jupiter 8 emulation available to you. I guess that's it for today. One person I forgot to mention. A cool person who stopped by the channel recently was, where's Paul? Paul Carter from Wave Sequencer. Paul makes a couple of soft synths, one called Hyperion, that I'll be taking a look at in a future video. Paul, if you're watching, I'm sorry it's taken me so long to get around to that. I think that Hyperion's really interesting. Also, Paul is working with John Lemcool on the 2.0 version of Unify. And so that's pretty exciting. I think there's going to be a lot of cool new stuff when Unify 2 comes out. Anyway, like and subscribe for more talky synthesizer content. Not all my videos are as long as this one, but you know, they're usually an hour or so. You know, go to wavetables.lol. Get yourself KRC Mathwaves or orchestral impressions, two gigantic libraries of wavetables. Or if you've got multipoly, go get KRC Collection 1, my collection of 90 patches so far. For Korg multipoly. I will be adding some new stuff to that in the future. And existing customers will get that for free, including that 303-ish patch that I demoed in the first part of this video. Be well, have fun. Oh, one more thing. Speaking of multipoly, it's only on sale at its introductory price for like another 2 days, like through this coming weekend. That would be March 31st, 2025, for those who are here from the future. Hey, be good, have fun, do something creative, and I will talk to you later.